Jane Rudolph.
I'm Monsignor Charles Minor.
I'm Father Joe Glass. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
And welcome to the first official show during the fall season. And I hope you are taking some time to go outside and to enjoy the beautiful weather.
Well, we are. Where I come from, we're out waiting for the geese to come from Canada. Any day now, by the hundreds.
We don't have any geese in Trenton, but I enjoy the fall. I like the colors of the fall, I like the colors of nature, and I like the colors and the fashions, too. I think you see just a lot of great shades
I'll
this
have
time
to
of
keep
year.
that in mind next week.
Yeah, well, I'll be watching you, Jane.
Okay. Well, to start off tonight, we're going to introduce a new segment here on Reel to Reel. It's called VIewpoint, and in it, local moral theologians are going to deal with very controversial subjects.
In Arts Review, Mike Gallagher will come back tonight to give us some interesting viewpoints on the current motion pictures.
And we're going to continue to celebrate with the people of the Camden Diocese, their Golden Jubilee. And later in the program, Dr. Robert Palestini, who's the superintendent of the Catholic schools for the Archdiocese, will be with us. He's the first ever lay superintendent. I think you'll find him interesting.
Well, to start things off tonight, think about it. When you have to make a phone call to the fire department, and if you live in the suburbs, you might not realize that most of the people who are going to come and help you are volunteers.
Volunteers are very Christian, you know. When Jesus said to us we should love one another, that meant also we had to reach out. And volunteers are part of that whole Christian perspective. And as in a parish, volunteers require an awful lot of people.
Volunteer organizations, recognition. None gets so little for risking so much as our volunteer fire companies, the men and women who give their time, energy, and sometimes their lives to protect their neighbors. The Lima Fire Company, located on Baltimore Pike in Lima, PA, is one example of these dedicated volunteer firefighting services.
Volunteer Fire Company is a group of men and women who have gotten together for the purpose of protecting their community from the threat of fire and other natural disasters such as flooding, storms, tornadoes, primarily though for the prevention of fire, for firefighting activities.
We take in the total gamut. We're a public safety organization, and the public safety can be anything from the fighting of the fires, which is what people expect us to do for the most part, but heavy rainstorms. Someone's property is in jeopardy. A basement is flooded. Any type of a rescue situation. We respond on all accidents with injuries. We take our ambulance and we take our apparatus. We respond, of course, on the ambulance calls with paramedics, with EMTs. We respond to assist the police on traffic control, searching areas for lost people. It's never ending. Whatever there is a need for a public service agency, we're there. We get used very much the same way that the police agencies are used. Someone's in trouble, they call either the fire department or the police department.
When you ask who are today's volunteers, overall the type of volunteer really hasn't changed. They're still a hard-working, dedicated group of people, but they're people just like you and me. We have lawyers, police officers, refinery workers, high school students, housewives, just anybody who has the time or wants to volunteer for the fire company and wants to help their community.
I'm a senior in high school, and a bunch of my friends decided to join, and they asked me to join, and I thought it sounded neat, so I decided to join too and got a couple other people to join.
Why do these highly trained, unpaid professionals risk their lives to protect the community?
A lot of times we don't think of it as risking our life. We think of it as doing something that has to be done. When you first start out, you don't really see the problems and the potentials for injury that can occur. The longer you're in the service, the more you read, the more educated you become about the fire service in general, you realize that there is a great potential for injury and death.
As far as the risk and everything, it's something that has to be done. You try not to think about it at the time because it'll just slow you down and make you nervous. But it's something that has to be done, and it might as well be by somebody that enjoys doing it and is fairly good at it.
As with all volunteer organizations, the volunteer fire companies must deal with many problems, including manpower, money, and stress.
Some of the biggest problems that we're facing, and we're certainly not alone, is the manpower problem. We try to get our manpower, people power if you will, from the 16 to 18 bracket initially. It is generally felt that if you don't get them then, you'll never get them. The problem there, to compound it, is 16, 17, 18, they're still growing up, they're dating, they're preparing for college, and preparing to move on in their life. We're trying at the same time to have them come up and respond to ambulance calls, fire calls, and to train them.
There's always a problem getting people involved in the volunteer service. The people that move into the community move in from different areas and aren't aware, to begin with, in some cases, that it's a volunteer service. In other cases, because of commitments that they have at home, family, job, etc., they don't have the time to provide that service.
Additional to that, to compound things, money. We receive the tax money that we get from the township, but it is indeed a help, there's no question about that. But there still is the need to make up the funds to bring up to your full operating budget. The percentage of coverage is, for the fire division is approximately, I'd say, in the 40% range of what we really need to operate and to incorporate in that operating figure monies for replacement of apparatus.
We plan to replace an engine in 1990, which is going to run us close to $200,000, followed in another 5 to 7 years replacing the ladder truck. The recognition of stress in the fire service, that's something has come about within the last 2 to 3 years. It came about after several large plane crashes, and people noticed changes in firefighters' behaviors and attitudes afterwards. A lot of people who run a lot of ambulance calls tend to burn out after a period of time, constantly dealing with sick and injured people. For our guys, it's tough with the amount of auto accidents that we run and the types and serious natures of the injuries that they see.
You're watching people's houses burn. You get there and you've got to deal with this family that's standing in the front yard and everything they own is in flames.
What will happen if someday our communities lose the services of volunteer fire companies?
The responsibility is clear. The responsibility is the local government agency is responsible to provide fire protection and to provide the ambulance service. They can do that either by their own municipal fire station, they can do it by their volunteer fire station, or they can contract out. If the volunteers die, the ultimate cost to that is going to be on the taxpayer. And while I would not say that the taxpayer is getting a free ride, because we do receive their donations, we receive limited tax funds, we receive their additional support through whatever other fund drives we may have during the year. While they're not getting a free ride, if the volunteer fire service dies, they're going to get it, they'll be in for the shock of their life. What we are saying to the taxpayer is, we don't want you to pay $400 a year additional in tax money. But when it comes to funding, we would like to see that $30 donation.
There are many other ways to volunteer other than just fighting fires. They need bookkeepers and cleaners and fundraisers. So if you have the inclination and the time, why don't you go ahead and get involved?
And there's much more to come, so stay with us.
You wouldn't give your baby a cigarette after it's born. Don't smoke while you're pregnant.
Mommy, don't.
Well, the times they are a-changing. For the first time in our history, we have a non-Italian pope, we have a Polish pope, and for the first time in the history of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, they have a superintendent of schools who is not a priest, but a layman. I'm happy to welcome to our set Dr. Robert Palestini. Welcome, Doctor.
It's good to be here.
You're in a tough spot, I'm sure, following a long line of clergy to be the first layman to hold the superintendent post. How's that been sitting with you?
Well, just fine, Father. I really have been involved with Catholic education for 25 years now, and it's sort of an involvement of my participation in Catholic education to the point where the Cardinal has seen fit to appoint me superintendent of schools.
All right, but there haven't been mistakes? People haven't been calling you Father instead of Doctor or anything like that? Are you getting mail addressed to Father?
Not so far. I guess I've been around long enough as an assistant superintendent that they've gotten used to me by now.
Tell me, in your opinion, you mentioned it's an involvement to the point where the Cardinal appointed you to this post. Is it in any way tied in with the vocation shortage? In other words, to put it bluntly, if there were more priests, do you suppose we would still have a layman in this post?
No, I don't think so. I think that after Vatican II and the decree on the laity has gotten more involved in church leadership. There has been a real evolution in that area, and I think that it's a natural progression that with educators becoming principals in our schools, that the culmination of that is myself becoming superintendent of schools.
So you don't see it related to the vocation shortage?
Not really. There are other priests available who could have been appointed to this position, but fortunately they saw me as best qualified, I guess.
Okay. Good. And coming out more perhaps of your call from baptism and your mission to be your priestly ministry in that lay way, and then the non-ordained priestly ministry, living out of that. I know you had an easy summer. You started back in June officially, right? And that's not a bad time to take over a superintendent's job with the summer vacation. But now that you're settling in, what kind of challenges do you see for our Catholic schools in the future?
I see at least 3 challenges that would be important, not only in this area, but probably throughout the United States in Catholic education. First, I think it's important to keep the Catholic schools Catholic. Secondly, I think it's important to keep them academically excellent. And thirdly, to keep them on a sound financial footing.
Now let's take a look at the first one, to keep our Catholic schools Catholic. What do you mean by that?
Well, in any of the polls that we've taken, Father, either locally or any of the research that I've studied throughout the country, one of the main reasons that parents send their students to Catholic schools or their children to Catholic schools is because of the religious dimension, the religious character of the schools. So that's why I feel it's incumbent on, especially on the 70% of us who are lay people, to convince the parents that the religious character is very much a part of the school system and will remain so.
I would think that is a question, at least outwardly, in terms of the clothing worn by the staff. They may not look as Catholic. We don't see as many priests in the schools. We don't see as many sisters in the schools. You're striving to keep people informed that the level of Catholicity is the same as in the past.
Exactly.
All right. And the next one, keeping them academically excellent.
Yes, I don't think any parent would want to send his or her children to a school, no matter how Catholic it is, if the school wasn't also academically excellent. So we have a tradition of our students excelling in academics and getting grades higher than the national average in all the standardized tests, and we hope to sustain and nurture that in the future.
And I would think the third one kind of ties back in with that. We're going to talk in just a second about keeping them financially sound, keeping our schools in good financial shape, and that does tie in with keeping them academically excellent. We've got to attract quality teachers, huh?
Exactly, Father. We need the money to pay the teachers, and if we don't have quality teachers, we're not going to have a quality product.
What are some of the things you're doing in the Archdiocese to keep them financially sound?
Well, it's important for us to find alternatives to tuition as a fund base for our schools, because unless we keep the tuition at a point where the average Catholic family can afford the tuition, I don't think we're doing our jobs as educators. So we have a program called the Blocks Program, Business Leaders Organized for Catholic Schools, that has already raised $38.5 million for Catholic schools and has been cited by President Reagan as one of the foremost private initiative type programs in funding education in the United States.
And that is drawing from corporate and industry leaders, and there's also sort of a grassroots support, a subsidy for students in your Archdiocese schools.
Yes.
Isn't there a parish subsidy? Would you elaborate on that?
Yes, and I think that's rather unique to the Archdiocese of Philadelphia also. For every student from a parish that goes to a diocesan high school, and we have 28 of them, so that there are 35,000 students who do this, the parish pays $240 to the Archdiocese, to the Office of Catholic Education, for each of those students. So that's quite a commitment on the part of the average Catholic.
Yeah. And it's quite an outreach, too, for you to be drawing from different sources other than tuition. Bob, thanks for being here, and Doctor, I wish you a lot of success in your post. You'll do as well as any priest, I'm sure.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Now back to you, Jane and Monsignor.
When we were in the front desk and watching the teacher's desk, we were a long way from thinking about the various ideas and apostolates that are involved in education.
Well, that's going to lead us into a continuing series on the Diocese of Camden in honor of their 50th anniversary. And tonight we're going to take a look at a different facet of the Diocese of Camden, the Spanish apostolate.
We continue today our celebration of the Golden Jubilee of the Diocese of Camden. This week in the diocese has been designated Hispanic Week to honor the many Spanish-speaking Catholics who live and work in the 6 southern counties of New Jersey. It's appropriate, I think, that Hispanic Week begins today, the feast of St. Francis of Assisi, since it was the priests of his order, the Franciscans, who were so instrumental in the care of the Spanish-speaking people in the missions of the New World. New Jersey's apostolate to the Hispanics, of course, is much more recent, but it was a priority of the first Bishop of Camden, Bishop Eustace, and has continued throughout the pastoral administrations of Bishop McCarthy, Archbishop Damiano, and the current Bishop of Camden, Bishop George Guilfoyle. The reason New Jersey is called the Garden State is due to the large farming areas in the southern part of the state. These farms attracted, of course, migrant workers, most of them coming from Puerto Rico, and most of them Catholic. Many of them settled down to become permanent residents over the years. Their spiritual care while working the farms prompted the Church of Camden to establish a Spanish Catholic center in Vineland. It was here that these workers were able to identify and give full expression to their Catholic faith and religious culture. In the 1960s, Father, now Monsignor William Reynolds, was appointed as the first director of the Spanish apostolate. He would also become the first president of the Northeast Conference of Diocesan Directors. The Spanish apostolate would eventually embrace some 21 Hispanic and Spanish-speaking Anglo priests, as well as 6 Spanish-speaking sisters working throughout the farm areas of the diocese. The ministry also took to the road with a mobile chapel that brought the Mass to the workers in the fields. Father William Collins and Father Ronald Flatico were itinerant priests, in a sense, bringing the faith of the Church to where it was needed most. And while the Church was deeply concerned about the farm workers, she did not ignore the urban Spanish-speaking residents. Very early in the history of the diocese, Father Roque Longo of the Missionaries of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary was the first Spanish-speaking priest of the diocese and founder of a Spanish parish in the city of Camden, Our Lady of Fatima. Over the years, the Spanish apostolate has flourished throughout the diocese. Today, there is a vicar for Hispanics, and the Spanish-speaking population is a proud and cherished part of the Catholic Church in southern New Jersey. We pray that God will continue to bless the Diocese of Camden as it celebrates its 50th anniversary. And during this Hispanic Week, we say to all those who have sacrificed so much for this very special apostolate, Vaya con Dios.
Monsignor mentioned the feast of St. Francis today in talking about his Spanish apostolate. To use this occasion as a wonderful opportunity to say God bless you and many good wishes to all the Franciscan fathers, sisters, and especially the Third Order Franciscans.
And we hope you all stay with us at Reel to Reel because there's lots more to come.
Years ago, leukemia and related diseases took the lives of enough people to fill a ballpark. But today, more people are surviving, thanks to research by the Leukemia Society of America.
Hi, I'm Gary Carter. Join the team that's striking out leukemia. Support the Leukemia Society of America. We're closing in on a killer.
We welcome your comments and suggestions and encourage you to write to us at Reel to Reel, 222 North 17th Street, room 907, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 19103, or call us during regular business hours at 215-668-9842.
Our resident movie critic Mike Gallagher reserves his words of praise for the select few, and the influx of the Vietnam movies are no exception.
The beautiful part about Mike's insight is he brings us to come to grips with the idea of the art that is history. And when we look at this, we really have to understand and believe that men and women truly die in war.
Hello, I'm Mike Gallagher. Movies about the Vietnam War have suddenly become not only socially acceptable, but downright profitable. Platoon came out to general critical and popular acclaim. The reviews of Full Metal Jacket, which followed, were mixed, but it's gotten high praise, and it's doing very well at the box office. And soon we'll have Hamburger Hill and the re-release of Go Tell the Spartans, a commercial failure of a decade ago. Now, one of the most striking things about Hollywood's Vietnam movies is how little some of them actually have to do with Vietnam. The Academy Award-winning The Deer Hunter, for example, wasn't about Vietnam at all, but about Russian roulette. It was an incoherent, macho daydream with strong racist overtones. Whites care about life, Orientals don't. Francis Coppola's Apocalypse Now was an ill-conceived attempt to adopt Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness to radically altered circumstances. The soap operatic Coming Home, though it starred activist Jane Fonda, could just as easily have used the War of 1812 as its occasion. Its real subject matter was one woman's quest for true love. Finally, Full Metal Jacket isn't about Vietnam, but about an obscure struggle going on somewhere in the dimmer reaches of director Stanley Kubrick's mind. Kubrick's problem isn't Vietnam, but the human race. We seem to have greatly disappointed him, and he's never forgiven us. Thus, he allows neither his Marines nor the lone Viet Cong sniper who confounds them anything in the way of real humanity. Platoon, on the other hand, along with Hamburger Hill and Go Tell the Spartans, at least has the virtue of being about what it purports to be about.
Smells good, doesn't it? What's for lunch?
It's from my girlfriend. Says she's not gonna write anymore. Friends at college told her it was immoral to write to me. Oh.
Oh. But it's only Go Tell the Spartans that comes close to catching the essential note of the Vietnam tragedy. Memorable for Burt Lancaster's fine characterization of a passed-over major who knows he must die because of high echelon stupidity, it evokes a sense of history. The Spartans who made their stand at Thermopylae, the French who perished trying to hold on to a doomed empire, the Vietnamese who suffered through decades of never-ending war. Go Tell the Spartans conveys the message, while the Vietnam War was indeed an American tragedy, it was not solely or even primarily an American tragedy. I'm Mike Gallagher for Arts Review.
Every moment is history, and the poignancy of that one moment was so touching to me when the young man revealed to his friend the letter from his girlfriend, saying she could no longer have him as a friend because the war is immoral.
Speaking of morality, we're going to be dealing with moral issues here on Reel to Reel on a new segment titled Viewpoint. Tonight, Father Francis Meehan is going to discuss the controversial Pope's American visit.
Well, it's been a couple of weeks now since the Pope left our shores. Maybe the distance of time can give us some perspective on the deeper meaning of the visit. I think the deepest meaning is that it was a pastoral visit. Pope visiting his people. That's what it was all about. You know, it's a kind of sacramentality church that we live in. And when you see those images of the Pope kissing a child, holding an AIDS patient, then you kind of know that these are signs of Christ, the shepherd visiting his people. When you think of it in these terms, some of the popular controversial issues become almost less important than some of the social issues that we never think about. We all know, for example, what the church's stand on contraception is. But how many of us know that what the Pope said to farm workers? No pesticides, no exposing them to pesticides, decent housing. We all know what the Pope's line on homosexuality, holding the line on homosexuality in our tradition says. But how many of us know, for example, what the Pope says on economic issues, what the Pope said about our racism in our country? We forget those issues. We all know that he's against women priests. But how about the idea that he said women should be called into fuller participation? Their gifts should be used more. Those things get neglected. When you think of it in these terms then, the central thing is a Pope visiting his people. I think one of the best ways to think about that trip is it's an exchange. We give to the Universal Church gifts of American Catholicism, openness, freedom of inquiry, gifts of our culture. But the Pope brings a universal gift, the gift of universality. He connects us with sister churches, with the Church of Africa, with the Church of Asia. How about the churches beneath us? We begin to realize that we're not the center, that it's a wider church. You know how the youth say, John Paul II, we love you? That's a great chant, isn't it? But it also expresses the meaning of a pastoral visit. It's a communion of churches. So we say, John Paul II, for visiting us, we love you, we thank you.
We'd like to tell you that you're going to be seeing many different faces on ViewPoint this year, and we welcome ViewPoint to Reel to Reel.
It's going to be interesting to meet the fathers and to touch on these various subjects which they will bring us. And I certainly like the one tonight about the Pope and his differences.
I think it's a welcome addition to the program here.
Well, good. Then let's keep going. Next week, in fact, we're going to see a feature on people who actually live at Churchill Downs, and you won't believe the life that goes on behind the horses.
And remember how we used to learn that music wraps out the unravel the sleeves of care or something, or was that sleep? But anyway, music has a great therapy for us we'll talk about next week.
We'll be sharing more of the history of the Camden Diocese and also an interview with Ann Attelia, who is doing some marvelous work fighting the hunger program in the Delaware Valley.
Well, good, and I'm glad we had this week to do, and we'll see you again next week. Until then, take care.
Goodbye. God bless you.
Good night. See you next week.
Travel arrangements for Reel to Reel by Atkinson and Mullen Travel of Media, PA. Phone area 215-565-7070.
Hello, I'm Gary Maddox. When I played with the Phillies, reading the pitcher gave me the advantage. But life is not a game. To give yourself the advantage, you have to be able to read. To get the help you need, call the Mayor's Commission on Literacy at 686-8652. Learn to read. It will change your life.
This weekend, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, all charismatics in the Delaware Valley are going to gather here at the DuPont Pavilion.
We invite you to join us 1 or 3 days.
Even if you're totally new, come on out. We've got special programs to make you feel at ease.
Please call 215-668-HOPE. We'll see you here next week at the Villanova Pavilion.